Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to St. Albans Rotary. Rotary is one of the largest civic organizations in the world, with a presence throughout Vermont, in every U.S. state, in over 100 countries, with over 1 million members. Rotary's motto is service above self. Today is a very special day for our club and the greater St. Albans area. It's a day we say thank you to a very deserving person that has made St. Albans a better place by demonstrating actions that mirror our motto. The St. Albans Rotary Citizen of the Year Award was started in 1993 by our club to recognize individuals that go beyond the call of duty, volunteering and civically improving our community. This is not a popularity award, as many of our recipients work behind the scenes, in the trenches, and miles away from press and recognition. These individuals help mold our community by helping our seniors, coaching our children, umpiring and refereeing youth sports, and serving on boards and committees. They are at civic and sporting events, supporting the causes, in many cases with no family involved, for the benefit of the program. Most feel unworthy of this award because this is just how they live their lives. Their takeaway is knowing that they made someone or something better than it was. The recipient of this award will have their name inscribed in stone in the Rotary Grove in the southeast corner of Collins Pearly Grounds for all to see as one enjoys the health path or an ongoing event there. Being a Rotarian is not a criteria for getting this award, but acting like one is. A committee of Rotarians review the nominations every year and make a recommendation to our board of directors where it is voted on. I came across a quote from Dr. Dennis Waitley that resonates with this year's Citizen of the Year. It goes like this. There are two primary choices in life: to accept conditions as they exist or accept responsibility for changing them. This fits this year's recipient to a T. At this time, I am pleased to introduce to you this year's St. Albans Rotary Citizen of the Year, James Farr. Jim could never do the things he's done without the love and support of his wife Ruby and his children Zach and Veronica. For this support, we thank you. We know that Jim spends countless hours away from home, even compromising vacations, to serve our community. Who the heck is Jim? Jim has coached Little League, baseball, and youth soccer. He's made sure that his daughter has made years of dance practices and competitions. A couple of years ago, St. Mary's and Holy Angels merged under the watchful eye of Father Roy to become St. Albans Catholic Family. That wasn't as easy as it sounds. It taxed both parishes as schedules changed and policies were tested. However, people like Jim stepped up and made what could have been a disastrous change a seamless transition, as he and others welcomed Father Roy into the St. Mary's Parish. Jim served on the St. Mary's Parish Council for 6 years and 2 years as chairman. He also served on the Parish Finance Council for 8 years as chairman. He's been a Eucharistic minister for over 10 years. And with that, we have Father Roy here, and I will invite him to the podium to say a few words. Father Roy.
Thank you, Tom. Tom listed a lot of those things, but he didn't mention as much of Jim's willingness to step forward. When he said he would do something, I didn't worry about it anymore. And so that was always a great help. to know that things would happen. He'd been on the finance board and, as he said, a Eucharistic minister. And, when you're trying to put two congregations together, it's helpful to know who you can count on. And thank you, Jim, for those 2.5 years, and I was glad to meet you and your family in the process.
Thank you, Father. As if that wasn't enough, most of Jim's time away from work is spent volunteering on various school boards. Jim has been a VSBA director for 3 years. He served on the St. Albans City School Board as chairman and was instrumental in the implementation of the Maple School District. Jim and his board were responsible for the policies, budgets, and setting all the operating plans and procedures to make the transition into a single school district. Since July of this year, Jim has served as chairman of the new Maple Run School District Board of Directors. The Maple Run School District was recently nominated for an award for their consolidation efforts. Jim will be the first to say this was a group effort, but he was the chairman. He was the one that was required to attend multiple meetings and training sessions, not only locally, but within the state. At this time, I'd like to invite Kevin Durth to come forward for your thoughts, Kevin.
So what I have to say mirrors Tom an awful lot. I could say he stole my thunder, but in some ways I think it probably says more about Jim, that there's certain things that are very obvious about him. But I'm going to be talking mainly from a point of view of the boards. He was on the city board for 10 years. Much of that as chairperson, right, Jim? And he was on the Franklin Central Supervisory Union Board for years. He was also a member of the executive board. And now he's a member of our new Maple Run School Board. And I think one thing that's important to know that some people don't understand, these boards are not, especially if you're chairing it, are not 2 hours a month where you go in and you just do your thing and you leave. And as I say, especially for the chairperson. And I've always really been impressed with Jim on this because he, like most of our board members, are working people, and they have jobs, and they can't just take off to do all sorts of different things. Yet Jim, as an example, just yesterday, Jim and I drove down to the Governor's Education Summit that took place down in Norwich. He spent the whole day down there with us. He has to take a vacation day to do that. And that's not the only one. It happens all the time, whether it be school board trainings or other things. And I really appreciate that about him because that's what makes a good chair, being in the know, knowing what's going on relative to this. I think if I had to say anything about him as I was thinking about this, over and above the areas that, if anybody knows him, he's thoughtful, caring, smart, good with people, all of these things. But he's also, and Tom kind of mentioned this, he's also what I would call a transformer. And what I mean by that is that he will get into something and make change as a change agent, working with people, and making it better after they're done. And I think that's something you don't always see. And I'll give you just a few examples of that. He was on the city board. Through his leadership and with the collaboration of Joan Cavallo, who's the principal, who's here also, they transformed a school that I think by most people might have said that 10 or 15 years ago was less than stellar, and has transformed it into a top-notch school in the state, working with a high demographic of students, and they really restructured the program. And I don't think Joan could have done that as easily as she did if she didn't have a board chair, such as Jim, who was working towards that with her. And I've got to say the same thing now as we've turned into Maple Run. I was interested to hear, I didn't know that he'd worked on merging the Catholic churches together. And he must be a merger specialist here, because he did he worked the same thing, working with me and with the board and with the administrators. It's a major thing what happened with them going from Franklin Central to Maple Run Unified School District. And it was not easy, and it was time consuming, and it was going out into the communities and talking to all the communities and talking to people and being available and giving the information necessary. I don't think it was a just chance that the Maple Run board happened so quickly when districts throughout the state are struggling for years and years to make this happen. It's because Jim worked very carefully with me, with the board members, to make this happen. And that's not only transformed the schools, it's transformed this community. And those of you who are in St. Albans City and town and Fairfield, if you haven't, you will see changes. And it wouldn't have happened without a good leader taking the role and making that happen. He really works to. The other thing I really like about what he works on, he's not adult-centric. What I mean by that is that he really works for the kids and the benefit of the kids. And in our schools, we have to work for our kids. And it's crucial. Whenever we think of making changes, decisions, you have to think of students first. And he does that. And the merger has allowed us to do a lot of things we could not have done if it wasn't for the kids. I'm going to end up by quoting something that was given to the Vermont School Boards Association when the School Boards Association gave the Maple Run Board the Exceptional School Board Award of the Year, which incidentally was pretty amazing when you think about it. The Maple Run Board was less than a year old, and yet they received an Exceptional School Board Award. And there had to be nominations and quotes that occurred that were sent down. And one person wrote this. I'm not going to use the name because I didn't ask for his permission. But I'd like to read it because I think it's a good summary of Jim. He says, "Finally, I strongly believe that you cannot have a successful, effective board without strong leadership. That leadership can come from many places, but often, as in this case, it comes from the board chair. Jim Farr works harder than any other chair I have known. He makes sure that he and his boards are well educated. He knows the role of a school board and does not exceed his responsibilities. He listens to all sides in discussions and reaches informed, well thought out decisions. He's not afraid of change and is always willing to adapt and improve. He's supportive of all employees of the district. The Maple Run Union School District Board is strong, and I know would do well under any chair, but they have truly excelled under the leadership of Jim Farr." And I completely agree with that. And it's great having him aboard, and it's great to see him get this award for Rotary. Thanks. So we have one other speaker who'd like to say a few words. He's our vice chair to the Maple Run Board. He's a representative from Fairfield, Mike Malone.
First, I would like to tell Jim to calm down. I'm not going to say anything too embarrassing. I've known him since the beginning of my time on the boards, through the supervisory union board and the executive committee. One thing he brought in the beginning was he questioned this notion of transparency. You know, why we were all stuck in doing things the old way, you know, because this is the way it was done before. And I think he brought that into the conversation. And when it came time to consolidate, it would have been really easy for St. Albans City and Town to leave Fairfield out. And I can't think of another school that probably needed this more than Fairfield, based on how we did budgeting and how we did things before. And he was never left Fairfield out, and I'm very grateful for that. I would also say that I'm impressed that he takes vacation days from a job that is, from what I understand, demanding, to go to school board conferences and things of that nature. Now, I've been home with my kids for 20 years. I don't remember vacation days. Every day is different, but it's just that level of dedication has always impressed me. And I could say a lot more about him, but Kevin already talked about this. From the beginning, my time with him has always been about the kids. Okay? We see school systems and with adult-centered systems, but it's always been about the kids first, and that's why he's been doing this. I'd like to think that I believe our Maple Run board is also about the kids first, and I think a lot of it has to do with people who ran for the board were attracted to Jim's leadership. And I'll tell you this point blank. The consolidation would not have happened, not so smoothly and easily, if it wasn't for Jim Farr's leadership. And I can tell you that from perspective of being on school boards for 9 to 10 years. So I'm proud to know him. I'm grateful to serve with him. And I think he deserves this award. And I think couldn't have picked a better person. Thank you.
Dave, do you want to say a few words?
How much time have I got? Well, I know Rotarians don't expect me to be totally serious. This is a solemn moment and one that I want to respect. But to be honest, I'm not here entirely for Jim. I'm the one person, I believe, the only person in the room that has both been on the St. Mary's Parish Council and been involved in the school system that Jim has led. But really, I'm here because I wanted to make sure Father Roy knew who I am, because quite honestly, my attendance isn't the greatest, is it? You people should know better than to laugh. Okay, I'll go one more. You all know how the copper penny, you all know how copper wire was invented? 2 school board chairmen fighting over a penny. But to be serious, as we should, as I have had the privilege of watching the Maple Run School District come into existence, it's been incredibly impressive to me to see not only the work that Jim has done, but the work of so many of the people that are in the back of the room here on the side who are happy to be here to thank Jim and to give Jim credit, but I'm sure who Jim will be the first to admit are a team that were terrific. And as Dr. Dirth mentioned when he was reading the nomination, it is clear that no team is successful without great leadership. As a member of St. Mary's Parish, frankly, there were some troubled financial times a while back, Not that any churches today are rolling in the dough. But I know when Jim came on board and took over the helm as the chairman of the finance committee, the church seemed to do better. The perception of where it was improved, and people's feeling towards the church improved, because for reasons that frankly I don't understand. If I did, I assure you I'd duplicate them. The one thing more than any other is that Jim seems to always be able to build people's trust. And it was impressive to see how he communicated that both orally and written, and mostly in the way he lives his life day to day. As he served as chairman of the various boards leading up to the Maple Run board, that same perception that people would have of him, of being able to trust what he had to say, when he talked to the people of Fairfield and made assurances to them that they weren't so sure about, or when he talked to administrators from the different schools that were worried about, after all these years, now they'd be employed by someone different than before, and how would that work, and not just the administrators right up and down the line. So I'd like to ask Rotarians in particular to take a moment and remember the four-way test that we live by, because every one of the elements of the four-way test that I hope I remember apply to Jim Farr. Is it the truth? Jim always wants to make sure what he says is truthful. What the board represents, what a superintendent represents, everything has to be truthful above and beyond anything else. Is it fair to all concerned is the second element of our four-way test. Making sure that all kids are treated equally. Making sure that everybody has what's fair and appropriate. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? If this school district hasn't built goodwill in our community and within the school community, nothing has. And finally, the four-way test asks, is it beneficial, will it be beneficial to all concerned? What great benefit our communities have, largely through the work of Jim Farr. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And with that, is there anyone else that would want to share some thoughts about their interacting with Jim? If not, I welcome Jim up here to say a few words.
Thank you. Can we do this every week? This is great. I know your time is valued here, and quite honestly, I've been fighting a cold for a week, so I promise to keep this as short as I can. First of all, I'd just like to say how thankful and honored I am to receive this award. To say that I was taken by surprise when I got this news would be an incredible understatement. You know, when I was young, I was always taught that if you can't be smart, surround yourself with smart people, nod your head a lot, and try not to speak too much. Today's honor would seem to be proof positive that this is a sound and successful policy. So I want to say thanks to all the smart people I've surrounded myself with. We have 3 tables of them right there. Kevin and Joan, you know, for years we've worked together, and all the Maple Run administrators and my fellow board members that I've worked with for years. It's like, with smart people like this, how can you not look good? Brenda, not to leave you out, you're certainly one of the smartest people in the building. So, it just makes me wonder how I would have fared had I managed not to talk so much. So when I mentioned to a few people that I'd be receiving this honor, I seemed to get a disturbingly consistent response. Why you? You know? And then they'd rebound and say, well, you know, yeah, because you're school and Rotary's business, right? And it concerned me that so many people don't see the connection between school and business. You know, I bought my first home 30 years ago in Southern California, where they have a very clear understanding of the connection between school systems and property values. That's where I learned it doesn't matter whether you have a child in school or not. the quality of the school system is going to affect your property values and how quickly the property raises or not. So a good school system is one of the major factors in determining whether a community is a desirable place to live or not. And when people want to live in a community, that's just good for business, right? So it's apparent to me that there needs to be some community education in this regard, and it appears that maybe I have some additional work to do. So 10 plus years ago, when I was asked to consider serving on the city school board, I had 2 children in the school system. Thought it was a great way to get involved in the community and the school. I didn't have a clue as to how schools worked, education, municipal government. But since that time, I've seen a lot. I've had the honor, as was mentioned, of chairing the city school, the Franklin Central Board, the Act 46 Consolidation Committee, and now the Maple Run Unified Board. And in each case, I was again able to surround myself with some very smart people. I've been elected 4 times. I've worked with 4 different superintendents. I've weathered a number of all-night negotiation sessions. I've seen successful and unsuccessful bond and budget votes. I've seen a monumental and historic school consolidation vote. And today, well, probably the most unlikely honor of all. So when I started on my board, my kids were in the 3rd and 4th grades. Now they're a sophomore and junior in college. And I couldn't be more proud. My daughter Ronnie is here. My wife Ruby as well. My son Zach will finish up tomorrow and he'll be home for Christmas. And all 3 of them are way smarter than me. I spend most of my time at home just nodding my head. So my wife asked me probably twice a month, why are you still on this board? Our kids are grown. When are you going to let this go? And it's a valid question. But I've learned early on that although this work is for the children, it's not only for the children, but for every resident, every property owner, every business owner, and every person who has a stake in our communities. I know this is true by the people that come up on the street and thank me. Very rarely do I get thanked by a student's parent. And I suspect everyone in this room probably understands this as well. So I can tell you today, like our communities, our schools have a very bright future. We also have some very real challenges. We're being asked to do more with less, but that's not really new. We're now preparing our children for jobs that don't even exist at the present time. It is no longer sufficient to teach children facts, figures, and formulas. We now have to teach children to learn, because the information that they need to be successful in the future doesn't even exist. It's not there yet. But I have confidence that we have the right individuals in place to be successful at this. So again, I want to say thank you. I want to thank you so much for today's honor. I look forward to working with all of you as, together, we move our communities forward. Because after today, I have a whole new group of smart people to surround myself with. Thanks again.
Congratulations.